On to Finance, Chair Norton.
Green. This is item 6.2 R277-477, distribution of funds from the trust distribution account and administration of school land trust program. This is an amendment. The motion before the board is that the committee recommends the board approves R277-477, distribution of funds from the trust distribution account and administration of school land trust program, draft 1, on second and final reading.
Any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, board members, please vote.
Green is a yes.
Green is a yes, thank you. That motion passes 14-2. Vice Chair Hart absent, the noes being members Bogus and Klein. Back to you, Chair Norton.
Item 6.3 is R277-625, Mental Health Screeners Grant. This is an amendment. The motion before the board is that the committee recommends that the board approve R277-625, Mental Health Screeners Grant, Draft 1, on second and final reading. I forgot to mention that this passed unanimously in committee.
Questions, comments to that motion? Seeing none, members, please vote.
Green is a no.
Green's a no, thank you. Okay, that motion passes 10-4. The noes being members Green, Klein, Earl, and Bogus, with member Hart absent. Back.
Okay, item 6.4, R277-752, Special Education Intensive Service Fund. This also passed unanimously from committee. The motion before the board is that the committee recommends that the board approves R277-752, Special Education Intensive Services Fund, Draft 3, on second and final reading.
Okay, questions, comments, Vice Chair Earl?
Let me just make sure I understand on this. The recommendation is into 2016 or 2026 that it would be 10% is the most that can be carried over. Am I understanding that right? Okay. Just reached out to a number of my districts and LEAs in the area, and then I got mixed feedback coming back. Many felt that was good. I had a couple that didn't. So I think that will probably explain my vote. I probably will not be voting for this, even though there's components of it that I feel like are in the right area.
Okay, further comment, discussion. I had the same. I heard mixed feedback. There's a lot of money out there. I think the hope here is that this encourages using that money for some of those intensive services that are not being met. But certainly want to hear from folks if it becomes a problem. I think those that are the smallest seem to have the least problems. So hopefully this doesn't impose a severe impact. Back to you, Vice Chair Earl.
Yeah, I just have another question. I know during committee it suggested that if they were running into problems with the funding for special ed, what mechanism is in place if they need additional funding? Especially in this area, if they've spent their funding yearly and, yeah.
Deputy Jones.
You got to push the...
Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones. So, you will never hear me say there's plenty of money. However, if a district, which I think one of their, or a district or charter school, one of their concerns is this quote unquote influx of, students with disabilities with high costs. There is enough funding that if we experience, or a district or charter school experience something like that, we could help from this level. Even adding those students eventually that, the money follows the student. So I'm always concerned, and I understand the planning and the concern, but I really feel that even if they're at 10% with carry forward and they do experience some kind of, unprojected increase in costs, we would be able to help them cover it. I think Dr. Voorhees would also agree with me. We can check with her though, but that's my answer, Chair, to that particular question, subject to any other questions.
Thank you, Deputy Jones. Other questions or comments? Yeah, Member Davis.
I've kind of been arguing the opposite of this for years now, and I've finally just become resigned. And I finally understand the fact that until we lower this carry forward amount, we're never going to be able to get increased funding for special education, because every time it's used by the people who hold the purse strings, that the carry forward means that we don't need any funding for special ed. Meanwhile, we have LEAs supplementing special ed with general ed funds. So this is the first step. We have some other coding things that are a big mess, I'll be really honest, that have got to get ironed out. But until we do this, we are going to be just in this spin cycle of special ed funding forever.
Thank you, Member Davis. Other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, let's vote. The motion is that the board approves R277 sorry, is there a comment? What am I missing? Member Lear.
Gotcha. And Member Norton may have said this and I missed it, but did you say what the vote was on this in committee?
It's unanimous in favor of draft.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, any other comment or question? All right, the motion then is that the board approves R277-752, Special Education Tenth and Services Funds, Draft 3 on second and final reading. Board members, please vote.
Green is a yes.
Green is a yes. Gotcha. All right, voting is concluded. That passes 11-2 with one abstention. The noes being, the noes being Vice Chair Earl, Member Klein, Member Bogus abstaining, Member Hart absent. Okay, back to you, Chair Norton.
Okay, agenda item 6.5, R277-554, State Charter School Board Grants and Mentoring Program. This too is an amendment, and this passed unanimously from the committee. The motion for the board is that the committee recommends that the board approves R277-554, State Charter School Board Grants and Mentoring Program, Draft 1 on second and final reading.
Okay, any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, board members, please vote. Member Green?
Green, yes.
Member Green is a yes. That passes 13-1, with the no being Member Klein, Member Hart absent. Back to Chair Norton.
This is agenda item 6.6, Board Policy 2007, Board Member Participation in Legislative Proceedings. This is new. The motion before the board is that the committee recommends that the board approves Board Policy 2007, and I'd like to speak to the motion.
Okay, go ahead.
This is a new policy. It is for board members when they are speaking in an official position with the legislature. It does not take the place of public comment. That's totally on your own. But this is to make sure that leadership is aware and have an opportunity to look at the presentation and that it represents our entire board. It also is to be when the board has taken an official position on something and that is the position that is relayed. It also has nothing to do with staff and their presentation. They have their own policy, and this does not impact staff and their presentations in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, Member Bogus.
Thank you, sir. So I'm going to tell a story, and then I'm going to make a motion.
a substitute motion. So if my husband were to come to me and say, Christina, I would like goats, I would say, I don't want goats, sir. We live in a house in the city. And he would say, how about pink? And I would say no. And he would say, how about purple? And I would say no. I just don't want goats. And so I could amend this 50 ways to Sunday, but I think it's bad policy. And so I move that I would make a substitute motion that we reject this policy en masse. Thank you, sir.
Let me just ask, is that in order or is that tantamount to arguing for a vote no on the motion? Member A.G. Buse.
That's not in order as a motion because it's exactly the opposite of the motion that is on the table. And so what you would have to do is just vote against it.
Okay.
So-
Does that do the trick, Member Bogus?
No,
I guess
motion
she's
is
saying that
tabled because We
formally.
don't want to vote on it at all.
Every part of this, I believe, is not good policy. I think it's poorly conceived, poorly defined, even goes so far as poorly articulated. And I don't think it can be amended into good policy in any way, shape, or form. And so I would just encourage a vote no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Carey.
Thank you. I do have several motions on this particular proposal, which I previously submitted. So I don't see Director Rasmussen, but he has them. Oh, okay. He has them queued up. And again, while he's looking, I just want to again recognize staff. I had the opportunity to speak to Deputy Stallings and Director Rasmussen on several matters last night, this being one of them. And again, despite the late hour, I found both of them to be earnest and engaged and very helpful. So thank you for that. So my first motion, that the board amend lines 19 through 21 to read board members may enlist the assistance of staff in preparing materials and shall follow USB E-style guidelines for written and visual materials submitted to the legislature when part of the board member's official presentation. And the reason I'm making this is, oh, thank you.
Thank you. Good catch. Back to you, Member Carey.
Thank you. And Board Member Norton addressed this. She said, look, this only applies when you're in the capacity of officially representing this body. And I thought that without that phrase at the end that's underlined, it would apply to any time a board member would go and present or speak. So that's the purpose for that particular addition in this motion.
Can we do a friendly to a committee motion? Right. Perhaps not. I think we might have to vote just because it's a committee motion, and so friendliness is noted, but we'll have to vote on it. So it's on the floor. Did we get a second? Yes. Okay, it has been seconded. Member Davis. Yes. Oh.
Would it be when part of the board's official presentation? Because the only time a board member would be giving an official presentation that would need the help of staff is when they are representing the board, as asked by the chair. So could we say the board's official presentation or officially representing the board? When officially representing the board. Member Carey, is that friendly?
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Okay. Any objection from the body?
Then we'll just
Hearing
say
none.
when part of the board's official presentation.
Okay.
We
All
come
right.
back to that
That's
later. Like you'll see that. Yeah.
before the body then. Discussion to that as amended. Member Straight?
I think this goes along the same lines, so if I'm in the wrong part of speaking, if I need to bring this up later, please cut me off. As a representative of the board on Utah High School Activities Association, I am a voting member. This verbiage would say that when I take positions or votes, that I need to have direction from the board. Am I misinterpreting that, misunderstanding it?
That might be for Chair Norton.
This is only when speaking to the legislature
So it's legislative proceedings is the
in legislative proceedings. Right up, yeah.
That's the title.
What was did that answer the question? Do you have a follow-up?
I guess to be consistent.
Or speak into it.
To be consistent, I think that if I am because in a lot of things like USBA, our representative is not a voting member of that, but they attend. I think that applies to several things, but in the case of high school activities, I actively vote. So what is my role or my duty to the board in regards to those votes? I think it's an important question. I guess what I really want to make certain is that I'm representing the board, not me. Does that make sense? And so, like right now, there's 3 major issues before high school activities. We do forward along the financials whenever we receive anything official from them, but there are those instances. So I guess what is appropriate as far as this goes, or I mean, I'll leave it alone if that's the direction of the board.
So I do have one point of clarification along Member Straight's lines. Line 5 says, present to a committee or meeting of the Utah legislature or other elected body as the official representative of the board. Would that encompass the UHSAA? Does this fall within?
I don't
I'm
think
not
so.
the drafter here. I'm curious whether those involved in drafting it, would that be covered?
Does it need to be
Sorry.
covered? Maybe I'm off track.
Well, that's an important point of clarification. Would this apply in the case of UHSAA presentations? Would that be excluded? Anybody know? Oh, Director Rasmussen?
So UHSAA is not an elected body, to my knowledge, so I don't think this would apply in that case.
Okay. So what elected bodies are out there that it would cover? I guess city councils, legislatures, county commissions,
boards.
councils, local school boards.
They're not
They're
elected.
appointed.
Yeah, but
Proposal for any change? Anybody have an amendment or a motion?
I
If not,
wondered-
Member Hymas?
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder, to the point of Member Straight, on initial look at this, it would say, yeah, you just keep doing business as usual if you're called before the legislature, but he is correct on line 5, or other elected body as an official representative. And many of us are official representatives, maybe not too elected, but what about like USSA or USBA or none of those things? So I guess I'm kind of extending from Member Straight's question or concern. Is there a possibility, or is there somewhere where we could be in violation of our own policy by moving forward with this, or is it worth digging a little deeper?
Right. I guess I could put that back to the makers, which our committee chairs teed this up, right? Is there language that would clarify the intent there and the scope, so we don't trip over ourselves?
Talking about legislature or in a legislative session. Is that? Yeah.
Is that perhaps then, I mean, it currently says legislature or other elected body, so we've listed a few of those. Does that need to be addressed with possible amendment? Member Straight has a comment. Oops, sorry.
I think possibly where we need to go with this is, I think maybe it's a discussion for another day, because I think there is a point that the business needs to be reported to the full board. In this instance, because there are votes taken, there are issues that have, and you may get calls regarding high school activities, and those things can be taken from here to the high school activities. Anyway, let's not worry about that. I'm 100% in support of the rule as presented, and I think perhaps this is just an irritant or side question to this particular rule, but I think we do need to address that. Okay, bye.
Put that in the hopper.
Chair
Yes.
Moss,
Yes.
I just have a
Member Green?
question. I just want to be in line. I don't know if I'm in line right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's see. Do we have a license, Chair Hymas? Or Member Hymas?
Yeah, thank you. I just briefly went and talked to Member Norton, Member Davis. I know behind the scenes, like, do we need to amend? Good points brought up. If we go to a city council as a member of the board, do we represent the board, right? If we go to a board meeting, a local board meeting, do we represent the board? So we do feel like maybe keeping that verbiage in there. To Ben's point, there's a lot of these areas where we are not on an elected board, right? The SCSB, the UHSAA, but there are still instances where this could protect the board and representation. So I guess my final thought on that is probably best to keep that in there, the other elected body, because there are other elected bodies that we do go visit and sometimes maybe asked to represent.
So I have a question then. Does that mean that lines 26, 27 should be brought into kind of conformity with line 5, where we say a board member may testify in a legislative meeting in the same manner as any other general member of the public. However, blah, blah, blah. Do we need to say there legislative meeting or meeting of another elected body so that we know that when we're showing up to a city council, we consider the distinction between speaking for the board and speaking as a private citizen? Would the same distinction apply, perhaps? I think that the idea is clear. We just need to make sure we're clear on the scope. We just don't want to trip ourselves up, right? We don't want to show up to a city council or local board meeting, end up speaking and not clarify whether we're speaking as a private citizens or for the board. So
But isn't this?
is that do you need to amend to bring in the conformity then? Vice Chair Earl?
Sorry, I just am trying to seek some clarification. This is if you're asked to present. So if you are in a public body somewhere and you say something, you're not asked to present that, right? So this is only if the board directs you or leadership directs you to speak on behalf of the board.
Right.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yes. AAG Buse.
Yeah, we are.
That board member Carrie made. And
Okay,
you need
let's
to go
bring us
back
to the
to
motion.
addressing
Good.
the motion that board member Carrie made before you go to
Good
the
call.
second issue.
Okay, let's go back to the tight motion we had. When part of the board's official presentation. So that was limited to the legislature.
Okay.
Member Klein, or member who's up first? Who's got
Klein.
that? Member
yes.
Klein.
So I just wanted to amend the motion, basically to take that, what he added, and put it at the beginning as the opening clause that would say, it would start when preparing an official board presentation, comma. Is someone typing? So the paragraph would, so removing what he put at the end to the beginning, but modifying it slightly, just so that it reads better. So the paragraph would start, when preparing an official board presentation, comma. And then you would take off the end part that's underlined.
Okay, let's see.
And then just strike the part at the end.
So that's a motion to amend the underlying motion. Is that a friendly, or do we need to tee that up for a vote?
Yeah.
That's a friendly.
Okay.
Any objection from the body? Okay. So that's a friendly. Yes, Member Carey.
Yeah, so
Oh, there we go.
I know it's on. No, so I want to say that I am against this rule. I look at this as a babysitting type of activity for the board. But I can understand in some situations where it could create good policy, but I'm just concerned that the ambiguity that we're discussing here is one of those concerns. So I made and you'll see like a series of 6 different motions, with the intention that we can address some of that ambiguity. So if we have to get this rule, at least we're not in that situation where it becomes a unintentional violation of the rule, or worse yet, it becomes a game of gotcha where somebody does something that they shouldn't have done, but because of the unclarity in the rule, they don't know. So that's why these motions are being made. I think that is representative of that intent, so I would accept it as a friendly amendment.
Okay. Further discussion to that motion. Is that Member Booth? Or, I'm sorry, Member Green, you had a question.
Yes, I'm just trying to see. Is first of 2 questions. Is Ed Durham rolled to this?
Member Green, you're really choppy. Sorry, we're trying to make it out, but are you able to get to a better spot?
Is that better?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Let's try that again. Getting an echo on my.
Nope, just kidding.
We lost you. Member Hart's offering if you want to text her your question to her, she can read it.
Hold on real quick. I'll text that to Molly. You can have somebody else go right now.
Okay, we'll double back to you. Any other comments, questions? Member Davis?
No, I just turned my, oh, sorry, I thought I turned it off.
Okay. So just looking at this, I feel like the only reason to have something in here is to be either prescriptive or prohibitive. And so it should be like a shall or shall not. And where you have may enlist the assistance of staff, that they already can do that, right? We don't need to put that in here. But if we're going to put it in here, it should start with the shall part, because that's the purpose, right? Is to make clear what is required of the board member. And so it may be better to say, when preparing an official board presentation, board members shall follow USBE style guides for written and visual materials submitted to the legislature. And then you could put at the end, if you want, and may enlist the assistance of staff in preparing materials.
Okay, sorry.
So I would move to amend that in order to reflect.
So what would that be? That would be another potential friendly when preparing. So we move to the front.
So you bring the
what's
shall
change
to where the may is, you substitute that last part, the shall follow, should come after board members shall follow USB style guides for written and visual materials submitted to the legislature and may enlist the assistance of staff in preparing those materials.
Okay, so just to change, moving things around to clarify.
So
the-
it's
the
stronger
flow of-
and
Got it, okay.
and the required part is at the beginning,
Got
so
it.
that it's clear that that's why we have this. If you're going to make a presentation for the board, it has to follow those style guides.
Got it, okay. Member Carey, is that a friendly as well?
It is, Chair.
Okay, without objection from the body. Okay, further discussion then to the motion as amended. Okay, seeing none, the motion is to amend to read when preparing an official board presentation. Do I need to reference a line item or a number here? Yeah, we had a couple friendlies without objection, right? So what line numbers are these? This is 19 and 20, I believe. So in lines 19, 20, amend to read when preparing an official board presentation, board members shall follow USBE style guides for written and visual materials submitted to the legislature and may enlist the assistance of staff in preparing materials. No further lights, let's vote.
Green is a yes.
Green's a yes, thank you. And that motion passes 14-1 with member Bogus abstaining. Okay. Let's see. That takes us back to member Carey, I think.
Thank you, Chair. The next motion I would like to make and I don't believe it's line 28. I believe it's that first line of line 6. We currently have a board member may testify in a legislative meeting. It's line 26, excuse me, yes. I wanted that to reflect the language up above where it says, a board member may testify in a legislative meeting or meeting of another elected body. And again, that motion was made to mirror the language in paragraph 1. Otherwise, we're left. Oh, I'm sorry, Chair. I need a second on. I'm just talking.
Is there a
eyes
second?
and-
Sorry, I wasn't cutting you off. All right, you got the second.
Yeah,
The
so
floor is yours.
again, without that language, it leaves the impression that a board member may only testify in a private capacity at a legislative committee or legislative meeting. But now that it mirrors or reflects the language in 1, it's clear that a board member can do that in front of any other elected body as well.
Okay.
Okay, my question is,
Yes.
maybe you are, as maybe a board member is speaking in front of another elected body, maybe not on behalf of the board, but maybe on behalf of their constituents as an elected representative. How does that fit in here? I don't see anything for that. Like, or is it just say they're not? I mean, you'd have to add it in there, appearing in a personal capacity or as a representative of their constituents and not on behalf of the full board.
Question for member
Is that
Carey.
a friendly?
Yes, I would accept that as a friendly. Again, the intent is just to make sure that the rule is clear that board members can attend and speak at those meetings as a private individual. So I think that would add clarity. Yeah, or as an elected representative without being formally appointed by the board to do so. So I would agree with that as a friendly.
So without objection, that's in. Oh, okay, we have objections.
Representing my constituents, but you are there in a personal capacity and representing your constituents instead of or. Because it seems like a formal kind of assignment board member thing when you say, I'm here as a state school board member.
So if it's not a friendly, we just need to make sure we're teed up here. This needs to be proposed as a separate amendment to the motion. Or amendment to the motion to amend. Right? Do we have that separated out so we can consider that? Did it get a second?
Well, he said it was a friendly.
But there was an objection. So
Oh,
it can only be
okay.
done
Okay
if
with
the
and representing my constituents.
so we can have a motion, the motion to amend the amendment.
I have a comment.
Okay? Is that to the motion, to your motion to amend?
Yes, so
Okay.
just in response.
Did we get a second though?
In my personal.
Okay, we're going to need a second if we want the motion to
His was
amend.
seconded.
As it's not a friendly. It's not a friendly, so you need an independent second. And
Okay.
then we can address. Is there a friendly to, or was there a second to Member Klein's motion?
So I would like to see it in full form.
All right, let's see what it looks like. Let's tee it up and see if we have a second we can discuss.
Okay.
Representing constituents.
Is an amendment to an amendment available? Okay.
Yeah, that's an amendment to the amendment.
Shall clarify the board member is appearing in a personal capacity or representing constituents and not speaking on behalf of the full board or the board. Correct.
I would second that motion.
All right, seconded. Back to you if you'd like to speak to the motion, Member Klein.
Okay. I have had constituents, many, reach out to me and ask me to go and speak at like a local board meeting on their behalf. And so we need to be able to do that as elected representatives, not elected representatives and a board member, because they're distinct. We are elected as board members, but also to represent, not just represent the board, but also to represent our constituency. And so it's a dual capacity, and it needs to reflect that.
Does that language reflect what your intent was? Okay. Discussion of that motion then, to motion to amend. Member Carey? Oh, well, let's see. You going in the right order here?
No, but I hit it first, sorry.
All right.
Okay, Bogus would be next.
Member Bogus.
Thank you, sir. So I would speak in favor of the motion because I do view them as two distinct things. And a recent example is I had a collective body of about 60 people, including 7 teachers in a school building, that asked me to speak on their behalf. And I probably would not have been present had I not been asked to speak on their behalf. And so it wasn't something that I was doing as a board member. It was something that I was doing as a representative of the people to a public body. And so I do think it does need to be an or, and I do believe that it should be in there if we pass this. Thank you.
Okay, back to Member Carey, then Larry. Oh, yeah, I'll come back.
Yes now or no?
You know, we had Member Green in line. I keep forgetting. Why don't we do that? She texted her question to Vice
Go
Chair
ahead.
Hart.
So the question was a clarification. Would this include speaking as a board member in ad interim committees? For example, being asked to introduce staff, et cetera, at an ad interim committee, would that require approval of a member's message by staff or leadership? I'm hearing yes and no, both.
Who would like to answer that question? We could go to the makers. Chair Norton, did you want to address, or we have Member Carey?
That's a good point.
I guess to some extent, it's a question about the intent and effect of the motion for if they want. Sorry to draft you, but if,
No, that's
if you'd
okay.
like, okay.
And I, in many ways, I look to leadership because you're the leaders. You represent the brand. But I feel like if they are speaking as a board member to legislature or in legislative interim or legislative sessions, even if it is as an introduction, you should know what that message is going to be.
Okay. Member
And
Carey?
can I follow up
Oh,
with
yes.
a question?
Member
If I
Green.
can do that.
Go ahead, Member
Can you
Green.
hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay. It's given an echo. I'll focus and try and speak. This is one of the biggest things that I'm with the whole rule is it just seems like a level of extreme duty and monitoring anything that comes out of our. I think when we signed on to this position anyway, even our names to that paper, we recognize that when we go into those positions, we represent the board. And so I'm a little unsure of why even we're having this rule as it stands now. I don't support it. I like the clarification that's coming together in front of us, but I was invited to introduce at the Ed Interim Committee for the literacy, and they allowed me to create a message that I felt important. They did a beautiful job presenting, but I didn't have to submit my message to leadership. It would seem very elementary to do so, considering what every single one of us went through to get to these positions. So those are my hesitations. If there's any clarification anybody wants to offer, I would appreciate that. Because maybe I'm off base. Maybe I'm not thinking through this correctly. So
Thank you, Member Green. We can go around. I'll just briefly respond. I've said this before, but I should reiterate it. Some of this asks the chair to do certain things. I had no role in proposing, drafting. This came from our committee chairs, so I'm sort of sitting quiet, and I'll do whatever the body tells us to do in the way of reviewing or approving. I think, there's all three committee members or chairs were the ones that brought this forward. So I'll follow you either way, but I want to make clear that I'm not asking for this. The role that's assigned to the chair in this rule is currently framed. So I'll follow your directions. Who's up next? Carrie? Member Carrie.
So when I first read this, and I'm reading from lines 1, 2, and 3, it says that board member presentations to committees or other meetings of the Utah State Legislature. Then in the next paragraph, it expands that and says the Utah State Legislature or other elected body. And the operational clause for me has been as an official representative of the board. The way I interpreted that, and my motions are based on the premise that if this body, either collectively or through leadership, asks me to do something, such as serve on the state charter school board, I am this board's representative officially on that body. But if I go and do a presentation for my city council, if I go to the Weber School Board or Ogden School District Board and I speak, or even if I go down to interim education and speak, I am not doing that as a representative of this board. I am doing it as a state school board member. And I think that is a big distinction. If we're saying that no, anytime you speak before a public body that's elected, this set of rules applies, then I don't think it can be saved. I think it's bad policy. But I always interpreted this as saying, again, with that clause, as an official representative of the board. So if that official invitation is not coming, this doesn't apply. And I would like to ask the committee chair, is my understanding correct that I have to be officially designated, knighted, whatever term, to fall into that capacity, or is it any time I show up? If Chair, if I may direct that to the...
Either. We're picking on Chair Norton because this came out of finance, but any of
This
the other committee chairs?
original intent was when you are officially representing the board to the legislature.
And in which case you would then make this clarification, is that right? So if you're not there by assignment or request, then you just make the clarification that
Then
I'm
you're who
here-
you are.
Here as a board member. I think that's what, I think that, well, I take that to be the effect of what's currently framed up as an amendment, right?
Can I just add one more thing on? And I
Please.
guess it's just from corporate America, but your brand, your color scheme, every tiny detail is so carefully watched because your reputation, you only have it while you're holding it carefully. And the second it is not, attention is not paid to it, it's lost. And it takes forever to get it back. And that's why I think we need to be careful of our reputation, of our brand, and protect our brand. In the NFL, they call it protecting the shield. And that's kind of what this is that we need to take care of each other and our unifying message. And then when I'm Kristen, I'm Kristen. And I don't have to ask you. But when I am there as a member of this Utah State Board of Education, asked to be there by my leadership, I give the message.
Member Carey?
Yeah, and with that understanding, I agree that when you're representing this board because you've officially been asked to do it, that yes, the board then gets to set the protocols and procedures of that representation. Again, my concern was and remains when you're going and you're doing something as a state school board representative, we can do those things without this rule applying as long as we are not there as an official representative of the board. And yes. So with that, again, I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, let's, further discussion of that friendly amendment then. Vice Chair Earl, or no?
Lear, are you?
Member Earl, or Lear?
Is the right time for this comment, but I'll say it once and then I'll have to vote accordingly. I don't have a problem with anything that's been said about a board member attending a legislative meeting and speaking as board member, unless the person's in board leadership. But I believe that if you're in board leadership, you cannot take off that hat. You've been designated by your colleagues as a leader of the board, and legislative people especially see you as board leadership, and I would say they see you as representing the position of the board. And so my vote will always be to distinguish between board leadership and board members. And again, I believe it's impossible for Molly to speak to a legislative committee without that committee, and I've heard this from legislators, without the legislature saying, well, I guess that's the board's position because Molly Hart is the vice chair of the board. So I don't think we can so readily take that hat off and on when it's convenient for us. But I think it's especially true of board leadership. So do I object to this particular provision? No. But I think board member should be distinguished from board leadership, and maybe that is a distinction that's just too cumbersome to make in all of this. I just want to express that opinion, and then I'll just vote accordingly, because I could say it with every single issue that comes up. You can't, once you're a leader, you can't take off that hat, I don't believe, because that's the way the public perceives you. No matter how many times you say, I'm just Jim Moss, and I'm speaking from Jim Moss, father of five. They perceive you as chair of the board, and I think that's an important distinction that we should honor, in my opinion.
All right, so that's a suggestion, not a motion, correct? I don't think the motion. All right, yeah, I think the rule or whatever this policy or rule, as framed, doesn't make that distinction. But I take your point. I take your point, and I think this as framed, would in some setting perhaps allow member Vice Chair Hart or whoever to say I'm speaking only as Vice Chair Hart, but. All right, well, I take your point. Yeah, I think we're just trying to look at the language here, what's being proposed, what we're going to vote on. So further discussion to this amendment. Member Davis.
Yeah, I don't think it's that hard when you're speaking to any elected body to say, I'm here at the invitation of Chair Moss to represent the board. I mean, when I was in board leadership, I had to say that all the time. I'm here at the invitation of Chair Hansman. There were sometimes quick on the fly, like you just mentioned, and someone wasn't there and they needed someone to come introduce staff or whatever. And I would say, I haven't been asked to represent today, but I'm happy to introduce these people and tell you how our board has voted. And then I'm just strictly saying, this is how the board has voted on this issue. And I think that's really clear. If there were any amendments left in this situation, I would amend to say, I'm speaking as a private citizen or an individual board member, and then not speaking on behalf of the board, because I think that separates the two. We're going to speak to bodies that have nothing to do with education, then we're there as a private citizen. We're going to speak sometimes as a board member, and we need to clarify, I'm here as an individual board member. I'm not representing the full board. But then it's already clear and inherent that you have constituents you're representing. But anyway, it's too late because there aren't enough amendments left. But I think that would add a lot of clarity, actually.
I'm occasionally asked to come to my local board and on something this board has not voted on, and so I don't have an official position to present, but they might ask me, yeah, you're on the board, what do you think? I think in that case, I would say, speaking as a citizen and a board member, but not on behalf of the board, and I would usually say, and I do usually say, we haven't voted on this, but here's my thoughts, for what they're worth. So, remember Vice Chair Earl.
Bogus is next, and then
Oh,
me.
Vice Chair, I'm sorry, Member Bogus. Okay.
Okay, oh, then I have,
All right, so Vice Chair Earl
yeah,
to the motion, or
and this is to Michelle Buse. Does leadership give up the right to speak if they're not speaking? Like, for example, if we're asked to speak on behalf of the board for a presentation, do we give up the right to speak? Meaning that if I wanted to speak later, that I can't speak because it's going to be perceived wrong. Do I give up that, being in leadership, the ability to speak in a legislative committee or in other areas?
There's nothing in your bylaws or in this policy that makes it so that you can't separate yourself from it. I think what Member Lear is saying, it's very difficult for the people who are listening to make that distinction. So I don't think legally there's anything that prevents you from doing what Chair Moss just said that he does at a board meeting when he's asked and he's the chair, or in front of the legislature. Just know that it's very difficult for other people to not see you as leadership providing the opinion of the board as a whole. So you have to
Okay,
be
I just wanted a
extra careful.
clarification,
There's
so it doesn't
nothing in
give up the right
bylaws.
to speak.
It doesn't take that
Yeah,
away from
okay,
you.
I wanna make sure.
Your bylaws and policies currently don't take that away from you, no.
Okay, and then I would like to make a substitute motion that we move this back to committee and that people submit their recommendations and that it be vetted in committee.
Second.
Oh, we can't? Oh, all right, vote on it, then we can.
That's actually a motion to refer to committee can be raised at any time.
Okay,
So it
we did
is an
that
appropriate
earlier.
motion to refer it to committee if that's the motion that you want to make and someone seconds it.
Second.
okay, motion has been made and seconded to refer back to committee. Discussion to that motion. Member Davis, question? Yes. Oh, we just need to light her.
Who am I lighting up? Who?
Member Davis.
And how many motions do people have left here today on this rule?
3 at least.
I think I have
Oh,
four
and then
more
there's-
on this.
4 more.
Yes, AAG views.
3, 4, and 3.
Just
When
when
I
you
speak
refer-
on,
Sorry, when you refer to committee, it's referred to committee at the point that it is right here. So it's referred to committee with these amendments pending, and that's the way that the referral goes to the committee. And so you would need to know that you're referring it at the position that it is right now with Board Member Carey's motion. And so committee is going to pick it up right
With
from
that
where you
motion
referred
pending.
it.
that's fine.
Okay.
I'll support the motion. I'll support the
Member
motion
Davis
to move it
supports.
back to Finance Committee.
Member Carey, point of clarification.
Just for AG Buse, when you say it goes back to committee, with this motion pending, you're referring just to this one or all the motions that I have filed in regards to this rule or
Thank-
policy?
Just the one that is before the body right now.
Okay, thank
The
you.
ones that are before the body. The others you will need to bring to the committee yourself.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Member Carey. Other discussion, questions to the motion to refer? Member Bogus?
Oh, if this fails, I have a motion, sir.
Okay. All right, so the motion is from Vice Chair Earl to refer Board Policy 2007 back to committee. Seeing no further lights, let's vote.
Green is yes.
Okay, are we still missing one, or are we down one? Member Lear. Member Reel. No, you're distracting Member Lear. I'm just. Yeah. All right, that passes 12-3 with the noes being Vice Chair Hart, Member Wood, and Member Norton. All right, back to Chair Norton on finance.
Okay, it takes me a minute to get to where I need to go. We're item 6.7, the program outcome and funding review and/or recommendations. The motion, this is a multi-motion agenda item. These came back from PEA with some legislative and some suggestions, I should say. So the first motion before the board is that the committee recommends that the board recommends that the legislature clarifies in statute that the local funding match for the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts Program is a minimum of 20%, and the non-supplant applies only to meeting the statutory match requirement.
All right, discussion of that motion. Sorry, looking ahead. Member Booth?
I have a substitute motion. I move that the board recommends that the board and legislature establish more internal controls to guarantee that LEAs pay 20% or more towards the program costs, requiring the LEAs to code the amount they are contributing to BTSA, specifically using a BTSA code in the system. 2, codify in board rule or Utah code that new funding goes first to increase the number of new schools in BTSA as the top priority after ensuring current salary schedules are met. 3, allow USBE an extension of time prior to shifting the current budget model to complete the research study underway, which will address best models for program implementation and barriers to opting into BTSA, and provide a report to PEA in 2024. And 4, loosen the requirements in Utah Code 53F-2-506 for a licensed full-time arts educator in some of our more rural areas who can't afford a full-time educator due to low student populations, to allow for more flexibility, such as an artist in residence model or a rural coach model. And I'll speak to it.
Do we have a second? We do have a second, so yes, back to you, Chair Booth.
As to item number 1 in the motion, that we want to establish more internal controls to guarantee that LEAs pay 20% or more by coding, specifically BTSA code into the system. There was an understanding that that was not happening in the initial consideration. But as we go back to our records, our staff has assured me that historically our BTS schools are paying their minimum of 20%. As in terms of number two, codifying the new codifying the way that the funding goes first to increase the number of new schools in BTSA, which is a concern because there was a belief that the money was just going to salaries and we were not increasing the number of schools. As you look historically over the last 3 or 4 years, there has been an increase every year, and that information was provided in backup, which you've had a chance to review now, the corrected information indicating that there was growth and new schools being added each of the years. Third, in terms of the wonderful opportunity we now have to be conducting this research study, by June, we should have everything back on that study and be ready to use that very valuable information to make the best informed decision as to the future of this very successful program. And to go ahead and push through now something in the interim that may be at odds with what the information is going to provide from the data and the research, I think would be premature, especially since we're already in the middle of that. And then finally, BTSA is currently piloting a model through NUES with northern rural schools with an artist in residence model or a rural coach model, which might be something that we would want to encourage other parts of the state to use when they can't afford a full-time educator because of low student numbers. So that I think this would help us make good decisions for the present as we anticipate even better recommendations in the near future so that we can continue to grow a program that has been so highly successful for the last many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Booth. Discussion to the motion. Oh, Superintendent Dixon, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Moss. May I direct a question to Member Booth?
Please.
Member Booth, on number 4, one of the things that we heard from LEAs is not only the issue of funding for a full-time FTE, but it was also more about availability. So I'm wondering if the language needs to include beyond who can't afford or find a full-time FTE. I mean, that leads to these other models where they have residents who would be willing. This is from some superintendents who said, we have somebody who would be willing to come and do artist in residence, but they won't go back and get their bachelor's in endorsement, but they have an associate, they've been an artist, professional artist, etc., and would come and do artist in residence. So those are some of the models, and I just want to make sure that doesn't preclude it just based on affordability, but also, I'm going to make up a word, findability, not being able to find someone. Thank you.
Chair Booth, did you want to address that?
I just need the microphone. You've got it. Oh, it is. Thank you. I think that's an excellent point, and so we would just need to add into that. I think that's a friendly suggestion. So, where is it on number 4? Who can't afford or find a full-time educator? Okay, that's good.
Any objection from the body? Hearing none. Yes, back to you, Superintendent.
Vice Chair Hart, I need a mic. Thank you. So given that, not being a board member to try and amend, but I think if you say who can't afford or find a full-time educator, I think you would just need to take out that due to low student populations.
Okay,
and then to allow for more flexibility.
Okay. Another friendly without objection. Any other discussion to Member Bogus?
So
I have some manifold comments. One is, thank you, Member Booth, for this motion. I really do appreciate it. Well done, well done. I do have concerns in number 4, where what is our vetting procedure for artists in residence? As someone who's worked in schools, sometimes artists in residence come in and they do incredible work, and it's a wonderful experience. And sometimes they come in and students don't always love art more when they leave. And so my question would be, what is our vetting process for that? And is that something that needs to be included in the motion? Or should we just include language that we need to come up with a rubric? I don't even know to whom I should direct that question. It just causes me consternation. And so I would ask for some clarity there, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Booth, did you want to address that? Or phone a friend?
I have some great folks here in the room that deal with this all the time. I don't know whether Laurie or Lisa might want to respond, but I have full confidence in the staff and the organization that we have statewide in terms of their developing a rubric, if there isn't already a way that they are already evaluating the preparation, the classroom management, the other kinds of the personality issues that you talk about that could make an experience less positive than we had hoped it would be, having spent the money and invested the resources. Is there anything that either of you would like to say back there? Oh, thank you. And we've also got Jennifer Thronson. Thank you for joining us. Lori, may she proceed?
Yeah, please. Sure. Oh, do we have a mic? Let's see.
Thank you. Lori Bayevsky,
Okay.
Fine Arts MBTS Coordinator for USBA. Thank you for this question and for taking this motion. We don't currently actually have a rubric for this. It's a really interesting point that's been brought up. I would say the best model we have currently is our POPs model, which is fully vetted. And I think we can use that as a framework for this recommended motion. Point 4.
Follow-up? Any follow-up? Thank you. Member Bogus?
Sir, I
or
have a-
Member Davis, then Member Bogus? I don't know who's first. Bogus, sorry. Molly's got the list. Go
May I
ahead.
query the maker of the motion?
Sure.
Sir, Member Booth, I would just love to know if it is your intent with number 2 to ensure that our current educators get their salaries first, and then the priority goes to increasing the number of new schools. Because I read that, and as I read it both ways. And so I just want to clarify your intent.
My intent is that I don't want to destroy something that's already working by not being able to continue to advance these outstanding, highly qualified educators that are in place because they simply, well, this year we've had a cut, and so you're going to have to, if you're going to stay with us, we want to treat them as we treat all other faculty across the board, and then we would proceed to expand the program. If the priority had to be expansion of the program first, even if there wasn't the capacity to continue what we already have going, we're not ready to expand in my mind.
Okay.
Okay,
I
want to
appreciate
protect
the
those
clarity.
educators.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And then, Chair, may I?
Yes.
I just would encourage us to support this motion. I think a lot of time has been spent. If you have questions about the math of all this, I have spreadsheets. They're even color-coded. I would just support this motion and thank the maker of the motion for the hard work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Is Member Davis in line for this? Yes.
I would just like to note that Coordinator Bayevsky has a killer bio. Some of us read in the email from the introduction of new employees that came out very recently. And I think we the university, the dean of the College of Arts in Montana University. So I just like to thank our wonderful people for expertly acquiring more wonderful people here at USPE. So thank you.
Indeed. Good to have you. Anybody else? Any other discussion to this motion? Seeing none, I guess we need to read this through. Let's see. Substitute motion is that the board recommends the board and legislature establish more internal controls to guarantee that LEAs pay 20% or more toward program costs, requiring the LEAs to code the amount they are contributing to BTSA, specifically using a BTSA code in the system. 2, codifying board rule or Utah code that new funding goes first to increase the number of new schools in BTSA as the top priority after ensuring current salary schedules are met. 3, allow USPE an extension of time prior to shifting the current budget model to complete the research study underway, which will address best models for program implementation and barriers to opting into BTSA, and provide a report to PEA in 2024. And 4, loosen the requirements in Utah Code 53F2506 for a licensed full-time arts educator in some of our more rural areas who can't afford or find a full-time educator, to allow for more flexibility, such as an artist in residence model or a rural coach model. There you go. Whew. All right. With that, board members, please vote.
Green is a yes.
Green, yes. Thank you. Missing one. Okay, that motion passes 14-1. The one no vote, Member Klein. Back to Chair Norton.
Okay, the second motion in this particular agenda item is that the committee recommends that the board recommends that the legislature clarifies in statute that state funds for educator professional time may be awarded by stipend or hourly rate at the discretion of the LEA. The state distribution would be appropriated on a per-teacher basis to the LEA based on the state appropriation and total number of eligible educators.
All right, sorry. Discussion, comment to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote. Member Green?
No.
Member Green to no. Let's see, still missing one. Did we get Member Green? We did. Let's see. Anybody we're missing?
Yeah, it's me.
Oh, there we go. All right, that passes 12-3. The no votes are members Green, Klein, and Bogus. Back to yes.
May I just articulate my vote?
Sure.
I just really feel like when you have an array of educators as present on the auditor's website, that the hourly rate should be used and that our LEAs should have that flexibility, and the base rate divvied up and then reallocated could have ended up with some LEAs offering fewer hours for educators because of the way the money would have been expended. And so that is why I voted no.
Thank you, Member Bogus. Back to Chair Norton.
Okay. Motion for the board. The committee recommends that the board recommends that the legislature directs the board to develop a framework for the teacher supplies and materials program, including purpose, distribution of funding, and use of funding by educators.
Okay, discussion.
We're still on
Oops.
6.7. That was the final one.
Any discussion, comment, questions to that motion? Member Klein?
I need a mic. I just thought it was interesting that it's the board recommending the legislature to direct the board. It sounds like something we can do already, if that's the case. I mean, why are we bringing the legislature into it? Is it necessary?
I can defer back. I will say we've done this on a few different occasions. Sometimes it is successful, sometimes not. Typically, it's to get the legislative sense of what we're doing and have their stamp that we move forward. And sometimes we don't need that. Sometimes it appears advisable, but I'll leave it to Chair Norton in this particular case. For this one, I get, yeah. So, Chair Norton, do you want to address that, or do we need somebody else from staff?
I think, quite honestly, it may be best to have Deputy Superintendent Jones to address just the quick history of where these came from and why we're meeting and talking about them.
Deputy Jones, would you like to field that one?
No, you're fine. Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones. Chair Moss. So to answer to further expand, Chair Moss did hit the nail on the head. There's been times when the legislature has asked for some type of work group or those types of things. So if you were to support this, we would go to the legislature at your direction. They may say, well, we're not going to direct you to do this in any committee or things, but go ahead and work on it. I don't think there's really any harm in asking them, but I don't know for sure that they'll, direct us in a open meeting or something like that. But it does typically help to assert ourselves in the sense of, hey, help us help everyone else with this particular program. And let's work together on it. So I think that's really what the intent of this is to just somehow communicate that we want them to know that we would like to work on it with them. That lets myself, the financial crew work with LFAs, things like that. It's just I think it's actually a professional courtesy type motion, but I don't really see any harm. You're probably going to have legislators say you really don't have to ask us to do this. You can do it on your own. It's really up to you. So, but I really think the intent was, hey, we care about this program. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on it. So, can you direct us or can we do it together? You may want to change the verbiage to reflect more of that if you want. So I hope that helps. So
follow up, Klein? Oh.
So, they mentioned that want to put it out there to see how the legislature feels about it. Is that because we think that they might have strong feelings about it? And if so, what are we assuming like they would be very for it or against it, and they need convincing? Is otherwise, I don't see that there would be a reason to go to them in the first place.
Yes, Deputy Jones.
Yeah, so Chair Moss, I appreciate Board Member Klein's question. If you look at the presentation that the legislative fiscal analyst gave, this program, the funding has been pretty much flat. It's been pretty, not incrementally increasing. So the legislature, I feel confident about this, are looking for ideas on what to do with this funding, right? Do they increase it? Should they roll it up into the flexible allocation, those types of things. So we've heard from the field how important it is, though, to our educators, especially our, early or our beginning educators, to have this type of funding available to them in the manner that you, the board, have directed that it be made available to them by August 15th. They are. The legislature is really looking for our input, a bottom-up approach to it. I can't speak for the legislature, speak for every legislator, but my understanding is that's a lot of the reason why, the LFA presented this was to get feedback from us, do that, and we have an opportunity to do that. If the legislature directs us, we got it. If not, we can still work forward and together with them. We always do. So I hope that answers or helps answer the question.
Member Klein?
So just to clarify, make
Sure.
sure I understand, it sounds to me like, whereas I was thinking it's us trying to find out how the legislature feels, it's more the legislature trying to find out how we feel about it. If we would be supportive of this so that they can then have the confidence to move forward on some kind of funding possibly.
I think it's that, and they want to know, they want we all want the same thing, and that's to really, make an informed decision together on what is best to do with this program, with this money, in the interest of the educators. So, having something like a directive to do just that, so that they are confident that the input has come from the field to you, so that when we give it to them, there's at least some level of assurance that everyone has had a say or recommendation in ultimately what the decision is to do or not to do with this particular program and the level of funding. Does that help answer Board Member Klein's question, Mr. Chair?
Board Member Klein?
Yes, so it sounds like there's been communication back and forth already between the two bodies.
Right, and gosh, I really appreciate that because why I appreciate that so much is oftentimes from my position, I hear that board members sometimes get surprised by what they hear staff have been working on or talking about with the legislative fiscal analyst. So this was actually that's another reason why, and again, we can work on the wording, is that by asking them to direct you to do this, that you're actually empowering staff to further the conversations and do those types of things, right? Knowingly about these programs. So like even tomorrow during Finance Committee, we're going to talk about more related to basic programs and get input from the field on those. So that was another aspect of this recommendation, was so that you, the board, had a sense of knowing that we're not just going up there and working on things and then surprise, here's what we're doing with teachers, supplies, and materials. So just some way of ensuring that we're demonstrating to you that we're trying as much as possible to involve you and include you on all these decision-making processes that are made up there. It's rough. It really is. There's so much going on, and we're just really trying to make sure you know that it's a joint effort and we're not trying to hide anything or do anything, and hopefully eliminate or at least reduce those surprises that might come up during the session. That's really what this is about. So it's joint. That took a long time. Sorry, Chair.
Thank you.
The long
Member
answer.
Vargas?
So-
Light.
I would like to amend the motion, but I need to see the motion just for clarity, please.
Sorry, say again?
I would like to amend the motion, sir.
Okay, let's see. There we go.
So I would like that the board recommend staff inform the legislature that they intend to develop a framework. And I would like to speak to the motion with a second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Member Green, second. Back to you, Member Vargas.
So I think this allows the board to lead, is I think the crux of the issue, that we can empower our staff to continue having these conversations, but to make it very clear that we're not asking for code or micromanagement. This is something we can handle, we can do on our own. And if I understand correctly and my recollection serves accurately, this is to make the pathway to these monies easier, if you will. And if I did not articulate that, I would love for a member of the Finance Committee to correct me. But I think that motion allows us to lead, it empowers our staff, and gets us moving forward in an appropriate way. Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's see, I'm not sure if we have any. Member Norton, Chair Norton.
And I'd like to speak against that motion. This came from a presentation from the LFA asking us about these particular programs and opening the door for us to be involved in the conversation. And I would worry that if we just say we're going to take this and run at this point, that I like your tone when you said it's a professional courtesy. I think that a better response would be the proposed motion just out of that professional courtesy tone.
Thank you, Chair Norton. Okay, any further discussion to the motion? So the motion is that the board recommends staff inform the legislature that the board intends to develop a framework for the teaching supplies and materials program, including purpose, distribution of funding, and use of funding by educators. There's no further discussion. Board members, please vote. Oh, sorry, Member Klein.
Sorry, I just got it up. I just would like to amend the substitute motion, just to add to the end, let's see, a distribution of funding and use of funding by educators. Sorry, I had it in my head and now it just disappeared. So inform the legislature. And then after developing it, we would present it to the board, however we can add, or to the legislature for their input. So, and present the framework to the legislature for their input.
Deputy Stallings.
Before finalizing.
Let's recognize Deputy Stallings for a question about the technical
Thank you.
implementation here.
Just clarifying, there's 104 legislators, so I'm trying to envision, when you say inform the legislature, would it be a committee maybe, like to PEA, Public Ed Appropriations Committee? Does that sound good? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I forget, did that get a second? Member Klein, did that one get a second? I'm not sure.
Second.
Well, we have a second. Is it, who's the original maker? That's Member Bogus. Is that a friendly? Without objection, we'll add that then. Okay. All right. So that's on the floor. Any discussion of the motion? If not, the motion is. Sorry, Member Wood.
I just have a question. Can we take an appropriation and then tell the legislature that we're going to tell them how we're going to spend it? Can we do that?
Is it within the line item that they've allocated? Can I address that perhaps? Member Klein, as I understand it, the legislature imposes certain restrictions. Within those restrictions, we sometimes have some freedom to act. What's the case here? Deputy Stallings, I see it.
Either way.
Or Jones, sorry. Deputy
Okay,
Jones.
so this is a great point to make, Chair. Currently, there is no code governing teacher supplies and materials. So here is another opportunity, or an opportunity to actually get that in there. It will, I really believe it will take this framework type activity to do so, but that could be an actual thing. So then, to the question, the specific question of, can we tell the legislature how we're going to use the funding? Sometimes, right? And that would be, here, support us this code. This is how we want to expand this program. Here's how we want to disperse the funding. Here's who it's, all those types of things could come out by way of this process. I mean, maybe consider this. Anytime the legislature directs us to do something, it's typically in the interest of codifying something or ensuring that the money is being spent in the manner that it was intended for. This is just an opportunity where there is no code right now to take a particular program and really make it clear and maximize it as fully as possible to the benefit of the educators. So please consider that too. Does that help answer the question or address the concern, Chair?
Any follow-up there? Okay, thank you, Member Wood. Member Klein, your light's still on, but are you speaking again, or are we putting this to a vote?
Well, I was just thinking it doesn't hurt for us to put together kind of a rough draft plan of a framework to present to them so that they have something to look at. and it saves one step, and just say, hey, this is our vision, and what do you think about it? We're not approving it. They're not approving it. We're just putting something together and then informing them that something's being put together and will be presented to them for their input later on. So it's, there's nothing being codified. There's nothing, it's just, it seems better than us going to them to ask them to direct us.
Okay, further discussion? If not, let's restate the motion. It is that the board Oh, I'm sorry, Member Bias.
No, it was a last minute. If members of this body have consternation with the word inform, perhaps we could use the word communicate to the legislature. I don't want us to appear bossy, but I do think that we need to lead on these issues. And this is something we can lead on, that we can keep here, that we can do good work on, and ensure that if it needs to be modified, we meet every month, whereas the legislature meets once a year. And so this would be something that would be a mess inside the system if we weren't able to fix it in September. And so we need to ensure that our teachers have access to these funds in a way that is not cumbersome, as was last year.
Okay, thank you, Member Bogus. Any further discussion? If not, we can tee it up. The motion then from Member Bogus is that the board recommends staff inform the legislature that the board intends to develop a framework for the teaching supplies and materials program, including purpose, distribution of funding, and use by funding by educators, and present the framework for the program to members of the Public Education Appropriations Subcommittee for feedback. Board members, please vote.
Green is a yes.
Green's a yes. Thank you. Let's see, I'm missing two. Okay, voting is complete. That motion passes. Vote of 12-3, the noes being Member Lear, Member Davis, and Member Norton. Okay. That brings us back to... Yes, Member Lear?
Break?
I think we could. Can we just, let's clarify where we are. Is this back to an underlying motion, or did that settle it? I apologize. Back to the underlying motion.
If we're at the
And
edge
that-
of something, that's fine.
I think we're close,
Okay.
right? Chair Norton, okay. So this puts us back to the underlying motion, which is, let's see, I lost track a little bit here.
Sorry.
Right, so your motion has now passed, correct? Right underneath it. Is that a substitute that replaced whatever underlying motion we were dealing with, or do we still have a base motion down in there? We're now in Inception, and we're 5 layers deep and wondering how...
Yeah.
Just 5? How deep does it go? Nobody knows. I think Kelsey's sorting it out for us.
It just would be this motion, right?
I think so. I just can't remember what it replaced. I lost the script on it. Okay, so that is the amendment then, effectively. But it was not a substitute, it was motion to amend? So we just need to have a second vote on the same thing. Okay, just like earlier. All right. That works. Okay, so.
It doesn't matter to me, I just wanted clarity for my own page.
All right, so this is the motion as amended then, is that correct? We just read it as, does that sound right? Okay, so we're voting again on the same thing because we had a motion to amend and we bring it back as the base motion now. So the motion is Member Bogus's motion is the underlying motion as amended by Member Bogus's motion is that the board recommends staff to inform the legislature that the board intends to develop a framework for the teaching supplies and materials, teacher supplies and materials program, including purpose, distribution of funding, and use of funding by educators, and present the framework for the program to members of the Public Education Appropriations Subcommittee for feedback. Same motion, second vote. Board members, please vote.
Green is a yes.
Green, yes, thank you. I'm missing one. All right, voting is complete. That motion passes 11-4. The noes being members Booth, Lear, Davis, and Norton. Okay, does that conclude finance? That does. So we've had a request for a short break. We'll call it 5, make it 10. What are we looking at here? 5, 10-minute break? All right. Okay.